Welcome. Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Emmett. Hey, Fiona. Got Frankie and Author Gold here as well. Came in earlier, and Asmal. My sound coming through for everybody? Awesome. Well, we will get started here in just a moment. Welcome. My name's Andy, and I'm an archivist with the Liminal City Museum, and I'll be your tour guide for the rest of the evening. Our last stop tonight is the historic Liminal City Public Library. So before we begin, let's first take a deep breath together. In through the nose and out through the mouth, allowing your feet to rest firmly on the ground and your shoulders to drop. Allow yourself to arrive. Let us now focus our sight inward. You feel a cool breeze raising goose flesh along your neck as the group walks around the corner. The library building looms. Sandstone and pink bricks stretch toward the sky, framing 15-foot-high stained glass mosaics. The images in the glass are green rolling foothills with beautiful sunflowers and ponderosa pines stretching toward a darkened yellow sun. 3 broad steps lead up to the large oak doors. You make your way behind the shuffle of visitors. You notice a small statuette of a tomcat in the shape of a sphinx adorns the railing. As you wait for the doors to open, you reach out and run your hand along the stone creature, finding a small fracture at the end of its tail, leaving it crooked to the side. Before you, the heavy doors began to open to admit the crowd. And then as you enter, the doors begin to shut and the light recedes. There's a musty smell of ancient papyrus, a mingling of perfumes, candle wax, and incense. You notice what appears to be stained glass windows were actually painted over on the inside with deep black paint, giving way to the library's interior gloomy feel. You feel a slight tingle at the nape of your neck and startle slightly at the words, "You can go on ahead." You follow the signs deep into the library until you find a small room near the back. It's antiseptic almost in color. The walls bleach white, but the hardwood is warped from years of footprints. Several rows of chairs adorn the room. You find a seat near the front, settling yourself into a soft pillow beneath you and exhaling a sigh. At the front of the room, your tour guide takes a seat in a plush leather judge's chair next to a small A-frame with the words "Tales from Liminal City Public Library." The only light is a tall stand lamp with a maroon cloth shade. She takes a deep breath before welcoming the crowd. It's so good of you to visit today. Today you sit inside the Liminal City Public Library, originally built in 1908. Some people outside the city claim it burned down in 2012, yet within the city walls, a straight story can't be found. Some say that one day we woke up and the library had just been rebuilt, without anyone in town laying claim to the restoration, while others say that the town came together and rebuilt it in a night like a strange fever dream. But what no one can dispute is that upon investigation, the books inside the library were, well, changed. Over the last 14 years, the smartest researchers and archivists have been investigating the phenomena. And as part of that effort, we have been archiving and recording the books at a secure location, but we keep finding the altered versions back on the shelf. These are some of the stories found within those altered pages. Without further ado, welcome to Tales from Liminal City Public Library. Veronica's hands gripped the flaking leather steering wheel, the spaces between her knuckles reddening with strain. Veins standing out as her shoulders and ears inched toward each other. Tension increased around each switchback on the winding mountain road. Loud bickering exploding from the back seat and continuing into a background hum. She tried to tune it out, forcing all her senses to focus on the road. As the silver minivan veered around a bend, blaring bright LED lights flared into her eyes from a large pickup truck. She reflexively jerked the steering wheel and suddenly remembered the sheer drop-off on the right side and just as quickly jerked it back, causing the car to rock on its struts uncomfortably. A jet of diesel fuel-laden air assaulted her face from the cracked window, and the truck sped away with a scream of his horn. Her entire body was now a live wire, every hair standing on end. She needed to pull over. The cab had gone eerily silent. Crisis averted. Near-death experience. Big fucking check, she thought. Maybe it was the shock. Everyone okay back there? She asked cautiously. Nothing. She glanced in her rearview mirror. Jenna, 6, had her head down in her tablet, giant lavender noise-canceling headphones, her feet swinging their tiny black Mary Janes in her booster seat. Chad, 13, sat with his elbow in the windowsill, chin in his hands, an image of the bronze thinker. He stared pensively over the drop-off into the rushing torrent below. She needed to pull over, give herself a few minutes to reset, stretch her legs, try to release the knot that now formed at the base of her neck. A sudden squeal broke the silence. Ah, give it back! From the rear view, she saw Chad had snatched the tablet from Jenna's hand and was holding it high up in the air. Oh, geez, let me see it for a minute. That Miss Rachel's looking fine in those overalls today, he said. He gave a slick, teasing smile and switched the sound from her headphones to the speaker. Ew, what is this? Isn't this stuff for babies anyway? Aw, you're such a little baby. Jenna squealed loudly. Chad, I swear to God, if you don't give your sister back her tablet, I will pull this car over right now. Be quiet, she hissed. Veronica saw the sign too late to make a graceful exit. Historic lookout point, 300 yards. She jerked the wheel to the right, jostling it once more, causing the car to rock violently, with squeaks and scrapes over the gravel road edge. She slammed to a halt at the edge of the canyon, car looking over the precipice. She exited the vehicle almost frantically, leaving her phone in the center console and slamming the door behind her. Okay, it's okay, you're okay, everything is fine, you're not in danger, she chanted like a mantra. Her heartbeat was heavy in her chest, and it felt like each beat was going to bring up bile from her stomach. You're fine. You're safe. There's nothing coming to get you. You're almost there. She continued to pace back and forth in front of the car. There was only enough space in this scenic area for 3 to 4 cars, and she paced the length of it, trying not to look over the edge. She did once, and she felt a familiar drop in her belly, and her toes began to itch from the height. Back in the minivan, Jenna frantically grasped the seatbelt buckle to free herself while Chad moved his head left to right, watching his mother's pacing. Without looking away, he grabbed Jenna's forearm in a biting grip. Ow, Chad, you're hurting me. Let go, you turd-brained loser. Let go. I wouldn't do that if I were you, he smirked. Damn, you think we've finally done it? You think she's finally cracked? Jenna's chest tightened in fear. She couldn't breathe. I said, let go of me. You're hurting me. Why are you such a whiny brat? Mama's little baby. Do you need your little bottle or your diaper changed? Ugh, whatever. Dad told me he found you in the dumpster, trash boy. Trash boy, trash boy. She yelled the last word like a curse. Okay, fine. Get out. See if she doesn't decide to toss you over that cliff. Chad threw Jenna's arm that he had been holding in his vice-like grip back at her. Her thumb hit her cheek hard, drawing small droplets of blood. She desperately grasped the door handle and pulled. She had to be fast. She couldn't let Chad stop her again. She quickly shot the bird at him as she exited the vehicle, accidentally slamming the door behind herself. Veronica finally calmed herself somewhat, and she took a seat on the wooden parking barrier and was looking out at the tall mountain before her past the edge of the canyon. At the sound of the car door, her eyes snapped to a laser focus as if she was looking through the back of her head. She didn't look behind her, only stated with a flat tone, "Jenna, get back in the car." Jenna hesitated. "I said now." The car door opened and shut again, too quickly, but she let it pass. As long as Jenna stayed near the car and quiet, she could get herself back together so that they could at least get to the city ahead for some breakfast. Veronica glanced around, taking in the scenery before her. It was gorgeous. Tan, lush grasses flowed out from the creek's edge, emulating a field of wheat. Bright blue and white columbines and pink fireweed burst open like a prayer in the pre-dawn light. The dewy petals shone like glitter. As her eyes scanned up the mountain, now becoming eerily visible, she noticed a glow of yellow lights from the small city peeking out. On the edge of the lights, she saw a grove of aspens snaking up through the dark green pines, their splash of yellow an errant stroke of the painter's brush. She lingered there a moment in curiosity, then allowed her eyes to slip over the dark green and blue pines and into the violet sky. Through the center of the town snaked a vine of gravel road that traveled toward the peak, zigging this way and that before disappearing into the gray rocky peaks. She looked to the left and the right along the deep gouge in the mountain where the river raged below her, pregnant with the torrent of late summer rainstorms. She thought how beautiful it was that the water and time became Earth's master sculptor. She took a deep breath, allowing the scenery to fill her with a sense of ease. She looked back at the small glowing town in the mountains. She allowed her eyes to rest there and lose focus, taking another deep breath and relaxing back slightly. But as she did, something entered her vision. She couldn't make it out, but immediately her entire body was covered in goose flesh. She felt a drop in her belly like a thud. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. She shook her head and looked again. No, it's beautiful, she thought. Must be the shock from the road? We better head on. They could stop in the city for breakfast and be at their cottage in the woods before lunchtime. She stood and slowly walked towards the car. Jenna was leaning against the passenger door, arms crossed over her chest, pigtails hanging forward like sea kelp, wrist cradled like a baby in the crook of her arm. It was clear she had been crying. Veronica approached her daughter and gently lifted her chin. There was a slight trickle of pink down Jenna's cheek where the tiny drop of water mixed with tears. It darkened her freckles to a deep red. "Are you okay, sweetie?" she asked. Her bottom lip quivered slightly. "Chad hurt me. He broke my wrist." She pressed her wrist out to Veronica and let it hang limply, sticking out her bottom lip further for emphasis. Veronica looked it over and poked and prodded it. Jenna didn't flinch, so she kissed her wrist gently. "See, all better now, isn't it? Do you think you can bear 20 more minutes in the car with him? We're almost there, and we can grab some food. Waffles a la mode? Your favorite?" Jenna's face lit up. "Ooh, can I have chocolate chips too?" "Of course you can, sweetheart. Now hop in the car and let's go." Jenna attempted to open the car door, but it didn't budge. She pulled harder, and as she did, the car door was released from the inside and swung open. Hard. Veronica saw it happen and pushed beside Jenna, staring directly at Chad. You will be kind to your sister, or you will spend the rest of the summer confined to wood-splitting duty. Do you hear me, young man?" Chad straightened up. He still remembered the burst blisters after being forced into manual labor last summer. "Yes, ma'am," he said, swallowing hard. "Okay, Jenna, up you go." She helped Jenna in and got her buckled, laying one more kiss on her wrist as she closed the door gently. She got back into the driver's seat and checked that her mirrors were adjusted well and slowly pulled the car back onto the road. A team of bikers was making their way up from the mountain, and no cars were in sight. She allowed herself to go slow, taking more deep breaths as she drove and allowing the bikers to set her pace for a time before safely moving around them. The rock faces of the canyon jutted high above them as she slowly climbed the mountain. She had to keep forcing her eyes back onto the road. The cliff faces were a multicolor of ochre and sandstone, with green flowing down the side like a surrealist masterpiece glittering in the sunlight. The canyon narrowed and the river disappeared. The road pressed up into one lane of heavy gravel, a sheer cliff on either side. She felt the minivan struggle beneath the elevation, and an edge of claustrophobia began to settle into her. The children were blessedly silent, but maybe they felt it too. They climbed higher, feeling as if one wrong move would doom them. There was a heavy fog, but through it she saw a welcome sign. "Welcome to Liminal City, Colorado. Population 3,567? The fog obscured the sign, but was the number shifting? 25? 1784? 1 million? 1.3 million? 200. She couldn't keep the number in her head as the sign fell away from the rear view and the fog evaporated. The sun's light was now peeking over the tallest mountain. A pink and yellow glow brightened the town like a stage light. Sitting at the first intersection, Main Street and First, she couldn't believe the juxtaposition of this perfect little town nestled here in the mountains. At the next intersection, she passed an old brick library building. 2 concrete tomcats perched like sphinxes on the top step railing. A sign stretched between them. "Liminal City Public Library, grand reopening." As she drove, the main street gave way to a row of brick facade shop fronts, a couple with small balconies housing iron tables and chairs. She saw one occupied by a small old woman with her morning coffee. She parked and sighed heavily. The cabin was just a little further past the city. They'd have a big breakfast at the Main Street diner and head on up. She was ready for a cozy afternoon nap. As she exited the car, she saw a couple walking sweetly hand in hand. The woman was dressed in a deep green poodle skirt with a pink boat neck top, her hair in sweet pin curls and bright red lipstick that matched the pins in her bangs. He wore starched blue jeans with a black leather jacket, his hair slicked back with pomade. He locked eyes with Chad for a moment, and he was transfixed, still as a statue. "Oh, Chad, look, how cool! It looks like they have some kind of theater event going on today. Maybe we can come back for it? I wonder if they're doing Grease. Wouldn't you love those? Wouldn't you love that?" she said. "I'd rather chop wood," huffed Chad, thinking it was low enough not to hear. "I'll remember you said that," Veronica replied. Chad's eyes got big. No, we can go. Yeah, sure, Jenna would love that." Chad pushed into the door with his shoulder, but many doors opened at once. The digital open sign flashed open, closed, and the door closed behind him, the great thunk of an ancient brass bell, a digital ding-dong echoing back. There was a clink of metal on glass as the aluminum open sign clinked against the glass, and he felt something shift. There was a musky undertone beneath the smell of bacon and hot coffee. Next up, we have a story by Matthew C. Bryant. Looks like he's here with us now too. Hey, Matthew. The House with No Address. You're fucking lost, aren't you? My wife of 15 years screeched into my ears, arms crossed, gazing out of the car window towards the pines that tried to pierce through the gray sky. This woman, I swear. For the 10th time, honey, I talked through my teeth. The host sent directions the listing didn't have an address. Some vacation, Henry. She kicked her bare feet up on the dashboard, reminding me of our first date to the beach, remembering the ankle bracelets she used to wear, shoulders loosening at the memory. Whitney, I teased. Henry. Her eyes stuck watching the pines blurring past. Look, babe. I offered my hand. Kids are back home. When's the last time it's just been the two of us? Whitney let out a slow breath, then grabbed my hand with both of hers, leaning into my arm. I thought back at the instructions in the email. As strange as they were, like some sort of fairy tale. Follow the mountainside, take a left at the red log, and follow the dirt road until the pines block the sun. I rubbed my forehead, trying to stay awake. We continued on the dirt road with music low, red log feeling days behind us, even with the sun never setting. The further we drove, the pines grew tighter, more ancient. Shit! I slammed on my brakes, stopping just in front of a wild dog that stared me down, challenging me to drive the car right over him. The dog suddenly turned its head at something, sniffed, and bolted away from the disturbance. Jesus, Henry, what the hell happened? Whitney woke from her nap, rubbing her eyes and stretching out like a cat. We are really in the backwoods. You said a nice cabin in the mountains, not out here in Deliverance country. I lit up a cigarette and handed it over like a peace offering. Let's not fight. It's nice and quiet out here. Quiet. I let the word linger behind my tongue and started driving again. Someplace I can finish my damn story. Sure, if you like getting killed by some hillbillies in the woods, let me guess, you're planning on putting that into one of your stories. She blew a cloud of smoke out the window, then waved the stubborn parts out the crack. Why couldn't we just go to Cabo like Lily and Joe? Joe has money for it. Must be nice. She side-eyed me, knowing she'd gotten under my skin. Should have kept your job instead of... We're here. The brakes eased, crushing gravel below. I wasn't expecting this, Whitney chirped as I pulled luggage out of the SUV. We got this whole place to ourselves? Just as surprised as you, honey. It's bigger in person. Each log was freshly stained, as if it didn't belong to the rotten forest around the clearing. Where's the key? She wiggled the doorknob. You see a mailbox? We both looked around the cabin. No mailbox. No address or box on the wall. Here, I'll grab the email again. I pulled out my phone. To get in, go to the front door. I did. Grab the doorknob. I gripped it. Then what, babe? It's a typo. Tell me what it says. Fine. I squint and look closer. Mars apart? Let me see that. She grabbed my phone and let out a snort. Seriously, babe, it's Mors Aperta? The words echoed from her throat, whispered through the creaks of pine trees, carried by the barks of crows. The air shifted and I felt nauseated, forcing myself steady until my eardrums popped. My body abruptly recentered itself. Click. The forest faded into a hush. I turned the doorknob slowly, expecting resistance, surprised by the brass smoothness. The door opened, revealing the warm glow inside. Babe? She dropped her bags. It's gorgeous. She skipped to the kitchen and glided her hand along the island. Quartzite? Yeah, this place is pretty nice. I looked around, surprised at the lack of cobwebs. If she finds out I didn't use the app to rent this place, she is gonna kill me. The shelves weren't empty. They were crowded with antique trinkets and carved wooden statues. Most statues of dogs, similar to breed to the mutt I saw earlier. All noses pointing toward a small statue in the center of the wall. It reminded me of an old tiki doll. 4 feminine heads facing in different directions like a compass, eyes represented by black jewels. I felt myself drawn to it and wanted to hold it in my hands, getting sucked into the darkness of their eyes, feeling my throat vibrate like a dog getting ready to howl. I started to reach for it until... Babe, this place is a dream, she said, embracing me and staring into me with her ocean eyes. The ones that always melted my heart. Take a look around, then we can check out the shower when you're ready. She got on tiptoes for a kiss, winked, then exaggerated the swing of her hips while walking away. She always knew how to get me going, pulling my strings like a marionette. White ceramic mug on white snow. Oh, photo. I pulled up my joggers, legs seizing as they rubbed my manhood, muscles melted into jelly. The shower faucet squeaked shut. That was fun, Whitney moaned, with only a towel wrapped around her head. How'd you find a place with a French country bedroom, too? Why is everything so perfect? I thought, forgetting to respond to her. My body felt great. It was the first time in years we were able to be as loud as we wanted or try out that many positions. For Whitney to do that thing, she wasn't nagging me for once. Even so, something kept me from enjoying the night. The feeling was primal, nameless, even if everything was perfect. Thanks for doing all this, Henry, she said as she sprawled out on the chair in her nightgown, leaving a man-sized opening next to her. It's a dream come true. Of course, babe. Aw, this is cute. Whitney pulled a photo album off the coffee table. I scooted in beside her, taking in the warmth of her skin and the softness of the silk she wore. She opened it, and a pit formed in my stomach. A photo of our first date, acne on my face and all. How did... Babe, you put this together for me? My heartbeat drowned out her voice. Photos of Whitney, posed in black lingerie. I still have that one, you know. She grinned, nudging me with her shoulder. Maybe I'll pull it out later for you. She flipped to our engagement photo at Niagara Falls, our wedding, the children. We need to go. I ripped the album from her hands and tossed it on the floor. Henry, she tried to free her arm from my grip. What the fuck's gotten into you? I don't know. I tried to find the words, my eyes on the door. We need to leave, now. What are you talking about? She broke free from my grip. For the first time in God knows how long, everything's perfect. I stood in front of her, eyes burning in a way she only saw a few times in our marriage. I didn't put that album there. But Whitney stammered and looked at the album, messy on the floor. She covered her breasts with her arms, meeting mine. Then how did they get pictures of me in? I had no answer. She nodded, and we left what we could, grabbing essentials and only slowing down as I passed the statue. Fuck you and your creepy-ass eyes. With a flick, it tumbled off the shelf and cracked against the hardwood floor. I tossed the bags into the SUV, hopped into the driver's seat, and cranked the engine on. Thud. Whitney, with a jacket over her nightgown, hair still wet, leapt into the passenger seat as I popped the shifter into reverse, tires spitting gravel. We didn't look back. I just drove, knuckles wide on the wheel, holding my breath as the pines started to open. Fog crept in, making the road hard to see past a few feet, but I kept my foot on that gas. I let out a manic laugh. Thank God we made it out in one piece. I looked over at my wife, the mother of my children, at how beautiful she was in this moment, how I'd buy her flowers when we got back, maybe save up for Cabo. Eyes on the road, she commanded. Fog started to melt and the red log revealed itself. I let a long, dragged-out breath, taking it all in. I pressed the brake, ready to turn and never look back, and went straight to the floor. I pressed the brake again. Nothing. Babe, slow down. Whitney gripped whatever she could. I stomped down again, foot going numb, cursing God, losing all blood from my knuckles. If I kept going, there was only a cliff. I jerked the wheel, praying we can land on the highway. Tires squealed. The smell of burnt rubber filled the cab as an 18-wheeler's horn blared. I turned my head, blinded by headlights. Henry. The smell of bacon filled the room. I forced out a groan as I stretched up to heaven. Good morning, handsome. My wife glided into the bedroom with a tray filled with biscuits, bacon, eggs, toast. She even prepped berries and orange slices. Her sundress was the same shade as the one she had when we first met. Or was it the same dress? Morning. My stomach growled impatiently. Enjoy, she grinned, red lipstick thick on her lips. Some bled into her bone-white teeth. You deserve it. Thanks, I said before it clicked. We're back in the cabin? I looked around the room again, my head foggy and throbbing. Eat, Henry. She strutted to the bathroom, sundress only covering half of her ass. I'm going to freshen up. I waited for the bathroom door to click shut before moving the tray aside. What happened last night? It felt like a dream that got further from my grasp the harder I tried to remember. The photo album sat on the coffee table neatly like it never fell. A knot formed in my throat as I reached for it, opening to a random page. What the fuck? Photos of our kids, eyes scratched out, aggressive enough to cut through. I kept flipping. Every image of my children scratched out. Wait. I stopped. Some have more than 2 kids in the photos? Clothes from different decades? Photos in different qualities? Those aren't my kids. The same scratches over each face. I flipped back to the pictures of my wife in black lingerie. I smell permanent marker. Black ink dotting her eyes, bleeding on the page. More women, different colors, different eras. What are you looking at, Henry? My wife leaned against the doorframe, exposing curves and skin through black lingerie, just like the photographs. Slowly, she slithered toward me, my heart a hammer, trying to crack open my chest. I tried to slow my breath, my blood moving down to my groin. Without a word, she took the album from my hands and placed it on the arm of the chair, and with a shove, she threw me onto my back, her strength disorienting me. She leaned in, kissing my neck, licking up to my ear, and whispered, Mors aperta. The air shifted. The same feeling when we arrived at the cabin, and I heard the trees whispering, crows barking, the click of the doorknob. Nauseated, I held in bile, forcing my eyes open until the room settled. I pushed her off, scooting back into the cushions of the chair. She recovered, leaned back in, moving close enough for me to smell the sourness of her breath. Nowhere for me to go, I looked into her eyes. The darkness drew me in, black as jet. My mind flashed back to the statue, to the sockets filled with those same impossible eyes. I wanted to taste her. My hands ripped open her lace, accidentally knocking the album onto the floor. My throat vibrated like a dog's hunger, primal as I stared into the blacks of her eyes. I kissed every piece of exposed flesh, the taste of salt on my lips. Good boy. Her voice was the sound of 1,000 wives as she ran her nails through my hair. I didn't look up when I started licking her skin, unable to slow down, snarling through the pools of drool. Her nails grew longer, perfect for getting that spot behind my ear. My leg kicked in hedonistic pleasure, howls surrounding us. My throat vibrated in response. The cabin faded until all that remained was dirt and pine. My back lay on a flat stone. Vibrations pulsed from it in waves. Whitney straddled over me, fully exposed. I loved the way all of her heads looked in the torchlight, how the black of her eyes drove me crazy. Thousands of howls grew manic. I clenched my jaw, holding back shouts, vibrations turning into electric shocks. It's okay, Henry. Let it out. She scratched my chest with her claws. My jawline softened at the sensation, chest lifted to the moon. I let my jaw loose, opening my throat to the earth. Awoo! All right, I'm going to take a brief pause to get some water and we will move on to our next story. Next, we have a poem by Ninja Stroni. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Lignification. Boil the water, the newscaster read, but steam is the transmission vehicle. I inhaled it. I breathed it in. Sinuses burning, crushed mint and ghost peppers, breaking out in hives, honeycomb, skin cracked, hardening into bark, joints immobile. I'm becoming. Rustling of leaves. All right, the next one we have is by Tim Chesser. All of these authors are amazing authors. If you have not subscribed to them, please do. Some of my favorites for sure. Jenny, there's a light outside. Todd's eyes showed a glint that matched the light. He turned around and beckoned at his sister to come into the window. The two were in the parlor as the house around them settled into the darkest portion of the night. Dishes clinked from the kitchen. Dog paws tapped against the wooden floorboards, and as usual, the old house creaked. Why, Todd, what do I care about a stinking light? Ginny picked up her book of mysteries and sighed as she stomped over to Todd. She crossed the plush burgundy rug and noticed the large gold-colored clock ticking above the mantelpiece. Her black hair stormed with her. Todd's voice was gentler now. Look, Jenny. Jenny knelt on the love seat and looked through the giant window. Her brother practically craned his neck out of his white polo to see what was happening outside the house. Jenny took a moment to tuck her dress under her knees. The nanny, who usually had a keen eye on the two children, was off for the evening, and the children were left to look after themselves. Their parents in the other room if needed, though they were nearly never needed. The children didn't quite know how to enjoy themselves without their nanny, but Ginny read much of the time anyway. Todd loved to make up stories and interrupt his sister's thoughts whenever possible. You always do this to me. Can't you just let me have one book to myself? Jenny stared for a moment at the light. The wind outside whistled, knocking leaves around the yard. The trees seemed to lean over so slightly toward the children as if inviting them to play. The branches rustled and shimmied. Wow, it looks like the light of a fairy or something. Todd finally understood. He was relieved. Earlier that night, he told his sister a story about a crackling stream that led as a path into the woods to a mysterious opening, like a rocky cave, but not as deep. Inside the opening, covered with hanging ivy, a talisman could be found. The talisman of Fairy Prince. The wearer of the talisman would see all things evil and avoid dark temptations. Todd hopped off the love seat and ran out the door of the parlor and up to his room, leaving Jenny bewildered. Todd, where are you going? Moments later, Todd re-entered the parlor with a talisman necklace. The prince returned. I must bring him the necklace. The talisman necklace was made of a gray stone with a brown string, and it appeared to have on it etched rays of sun. Jenny tried not to laugh. It's just a light, little brother. Before Jenny could stop him, Todd ran to find the keeper of the light. Jenny screamed after him. She ran to find her parents. Todd was magnetized by the flicker outside, opened the front door of the house, and ran through the hedges until he disappeared out of sight and into the darkness beyond the manicured garden. The wind outside carried a small flurry of dust through the door of the home and hissed about the foyer. Todd's family members were beside themselves. Mother couldn't understand why Todd went outside when it was so dark. Go after him. He's your son. Mother pulled her floral sweater shut as she waited at the doorstep of the house with Jenny. Father took a poker from the fireplace and ran outside to follow his son. Among the bustling, he neglected to wear a sweater, but he didn't worry about getting soot on his white shirt. As soon as he exited the house, Tom came running back through the hedges toward the house. His brown hair sailed with him, and he wore the talisman around his neck. He said I could keep it. Father shrunk to meet his son. Keep what, son? What do you mean? Jenny noticed the light in the distance had disappeared, and she looked to see if it could be found anywhere else. The talisman, Daddy. Father swore he saw a twinkle of mist or glitter as it flew into the sky beyond the hedges. It appeared his children weren't threatened tonight, but one received a gift he didn't quite know how to keep. Whatever happened past the garden, Todd no longer looked at his family the same. His eyes were wide, and it seemed like his pupils were dilated. He didn't smile, but he didn't frown. He felt distant, as if part of him stayed beyond the hedges. Instead of answering Father, he looked at the sky and back at Father, unsure of what to say. Father glanced at Mother, who swished her hair off her forehead and smiled reassuringly. Father turned back to Todd. Don't run off like that. We were really worried about you. Okay. Daddy loves you. Father said as much, but Todd said nothing in return. With a blank expression on his face, Todd pulled away from Father and walked toward the house. Oh, Todd, indeed. It looks like we have some new people that joined us. So we are visiting Liminal City Public Library, and we're reading some stories from the community that were submitted to me that all kind of fall into the same vein as the Liminal City Public Library. And now that I'm thinking about it, I will go ahead and link you guys these stories too in the chat. Maybe. Well, they'll all be available. I'll link to all the stories in the post on the replay as well, so you guys will get to see that. Thank you, Tim. Night, Matthew. We've got just two more left. We've got a story next by Words About Things and Stuff, and then one from our very own Fiona Bridges. All right, we're about to go to our next story, and you didn't need to hear any of the previous stories to hear the next one. So feel free to hang out for this one. Next, it's called Shanksboro. And again, this is by Words About Things and Stuff. Shanksboro was the place where everyone knew everyone. Secrets were not permitted to endure, and time stood still. The town, if you could call it that, had a population of 737. That's what the sign said, at least. The tallest thing in town was the water tower. The biggest building in town was a 3-story strip mall. It sat like a blur on the 2-lane highway between two much larger cities. The first storefront was a convenience store. The locals used it for groceries. The second storefront was a pizza restaurant and bar. There were sometimes motorcycles parked out front. The third storefront was a Shanksboro mystery. It was the only Shanksboro mystery, for that matter. The UFO video DVD storefront was a permanent landmark. Permanent. Even the oldest residents could not recall a time when it wasn't there. Some remembered it predating DVDs. Some remembered it predating VCRs. Some remembered it predating even the strip mall itself. It had always been closed. The black and orange no trespassing sign in the window nearest the pizza place had always been there. Terry and Terry were twins, high school seniors. Shanksboro was too small to have its own schools. The pair waited, as they did every school day, on the corner in front of the UFO video DVD for the bus. For 13 years, they thought about the place. What else was there to do when the bus was always late? "I think I see something moving," Terry said. "Ain't nothing there. Ain't never been nothing," answered her brother. "I swear," she said. Terry didn't know if she was serious or not. He could never tell. Everyone at school teased that the twins should know things like that. He hated being teased, and one time he tried to tell the other kids that they were the wrong kind of twins, but it came out all wrong, mostly because he didn't know what he was talking about. It was just something he heard someone say once. "Shut up. Ain't nothing." He looked down the road for the bus. The highway was empty. "Go look," Terry teased. "Uh-uh." "Come on," she urged. "You chicken?" "Shut up." Terry looked again for the bus. Still nothing. "I'll get you a pop if you do." Terry was thirsty, and he drank more soda than water most days. It seemed like Terry understood him better than he understood her. He hated that. Nuh-uh. He would not be tempted. Terry raised the stakes. "And some Funyuns." Terry missed breakfast that morning. His sister knew it too. His stomach gurgled. Funyuns and a pop sounds so good. Okay, I'll do it, but you gotta get 'em first." Terry gladly agreed. She skipped to the store and came back a moment later with a Mountain Dew and a small bag of Funyuns. Terry first. "Fine, whatever." Terry walked to the door of the UFO video DVD and pressed his face against the glass. He had never been so close before. He tried the door. Surprisingly, it was open. Before stepping inside, he turned around. "You gotta stay inside for a whole minute." "Don't you eat my chips now." Terry nodded her head. Terry stepped inside the UFO video DVD and the door closed behind him. Shanksboro was the place where everyone knew everyone. Secrets were not permitted to endure and time stood still. The town, if you could call it that, had a population of 736. That's what the sign said, at least. Terry was a high school senior. Shanksboro was too small to have its own schools. She waited, as she did every school day, on the corner in the front of the UFO video DVD for the bus. Fun ions. All right, we've got one more. This one is our Fiona Bridges, and it's "Don't let them talk about their dreams." I am going to take a break again to get some more water. This one's a little bit All right. Don't let them talk about their dreams. Also known as the Octopus Lady Part 1. Ellie, dreaming, stared out a small window of Joan's street corner art studio, replaying the day's classes in her head. This particular window was located in the utility room in the back and offered a convenient view of Purse Street. The warm water from the tap she was using to clean the paint-covered brushes felt nice on her hands. A sense of euphoria washed over her as she fell into a slight trance before watching the steady stream of tourists and locals passing by on the sidewalk, periodically joined by horse-drawn buggies and bicycle pedicabs. Ellie had recently moved to Savannah, Georgia with her husband and 2 kids after living all over the northwest panhandle of Florida for almost 15 years. She had fallen in love with the haunted city 2 years back when her and her best friend Fiona and their good friend Lacey had visited for a birthday trip. They had stayed in an adorable townhome away from the busy tourist area, and the charm and history of the city had instantly won her over. Ellie had been overjoyed when her husband Shep had surprised her 6 months ago with the news that he had landed a job at Nexstar Broadcasting and that they would be moving to Savannah, Georgia, the dream she'd been sharing with him at least weekly since her and her best friend's trip. She hadn't even known that he had applied for the job. He hadn't wanted to get her hopes up. The pay was better than he had expected, too, but because of this, he was also able to make her lifelong dream of owning an art studio come true. Now, here she was, in that studio, the Octopus Lady. Ellie was still in disbelief that the small studio was hers. She practically stumbled across the location her first day alone in the city after dropping her children off for their first day of school. She thought it would be months before she'd be ready to even start looking for a place to run her art studio. The Octopus Lady had found her, it seemed. Running her fingers through the fine hairs of the brushes as she ran them under the water, her thoughts led back to that day. She had almost passed right by it. She had not been paying attention and had tripped on a cobblestone that had become half dislodged from the bumpy old-world path. The local folklore surrounding the misplaced stones was one of the darker tales of the old city. She knew the story about a burial ground under the city was just a myth. Still, she couldn't shake the image of a bloated corpse bursting beneath the cobblestones, the ground splitting apart from the force as she started to pitch forward. She caught herself on a lamp post before she fell to the ground, but the impact of her toe hitting the stone had done some damage. The top of her toenail had come clean off. She stopped to inspect as she cursed out in pain. She was bleeding badly. In her peripheral vision, a dark figure appeared. She looked to her right. A beautiful woman in the doorway of the shop. Her skin was a dark shade of mocha. Her silky black hair was woven into a thick braid that she had draped over her right shoulder. She wore a black tunic dress layered with a black lace shawl and cinched at the slender waist by a vibrant blue and red beaded belt. Ellie felt embarrassed at drawing out the saintly-looking woman from her shop. She looked around, thinking she was making a spectacle of herself, but no one was around. Strangely, all of the people who had only moments ago been on the sidewalk seemed to have vanished. No cars were passing by. She looked back at the woman who was staring at her with a strange smile on her face. "You look like you could use some patching up." She spoke with an accent Ellie thought might carry a hint of Spanish. "I'm okay," Ellie said through her pursed lips, not wanting to be an imposition. "You need to come inside and get that cleaned up. I have a utility room in the back of the studio with a sink. I'll get it bandaged for you. Otherwise, you'll be bleeding all the way home." Ellie hesitated, but decided the woman was right. She hobbled towards the studio door. The woman turned and gestured Ellie to follow her towards the back. Ellie took a sharp inhale as she surveyed her surroundings. Colorful paintings of many different sizes lined 3 walls of the open room. One wall was lined with tall shelves. Two long paint-splattered wooden tables stretched out parallel to each other in the large area, chairs facing empty easels. I'll get you fixed up in plenty of time to get to your children. That time when the woman spoke, Ellie could hear the southern twang in her voice. This studio is absolutely breathtaking. I plan on opening my own soon. This is an inspiration. Yes, I know, the old woman said casually. You know, Ellie asked. How could you? I'm a little intuitive. Ellie was not surprised. She held that gift herself. After piercing the veil of death a few years earlier from battling a pesky breast tumor, her gift had only intensified. She had a feeling the woman already knew that, too. Ellie realized in horror that she was bleeding out onto the woman's floor, and the red droplets were seeping down into the cracks. As she watched, her blood seemed to clot towards the cracks, like the small droplets were being pulled. A figment of my imagination, she thought to herself as she continued to follow the strange woman toward the back of the corner shop. When they reached the utility room, the woman stood on her tiptoes and pulled out a small first aid kit from a pantry to the right of the window. She motioned for Ellie to sit down on a metal fold-out chair, and then she kneeled in front of her and opened the kit. She set to work using the kit's alcohol wipes and wrapped it with bandage tape and gauze. She spoke as she worked. You need to keep a first aid kit around if you're going to own a studio, especially if you allow spirits. Spirits? The woman smiled almost playfully. You know, wine, booze. Oh, yeah, spirits. I guess that makes sense. There's probably a lot of stuff I've never thought about before. I have never owned a business before. These things can get pretty rowdy. You'd be surprised. Most people are okay during the class. The worst behavior usually comes after a few days when they don't like the outcome. The outcome of the painting? They wait that long to complain? Ellie puzzled. A look of fear or dread suddenly flashed across the woman's face, but was gone in an instant. The woman opened her mouth like she was going to speak, but snapped it shut and shrugged her shoulders before turning to walk back into the main room of the art studio. Ellie followed after, slipping her shoes back on her feet. I've been to one of those parties with my friends a few years ago, actually, when we were visiting Savannah. The woman turned around, hands resting on her midsection, and she watched Ellie for a moment before speaking. You could buy this studio from me. Do you own the studio yourself? You don't rent it? Oh, I would never stand for that. I like making my own rules. These button-up business types, they don't like me. The spirits. My name's Carrie, Dad. She held out a hand to Ellie. Ellie cleared the space between them and shook the woman's hands graciously. It's a deal, then, the woman said matter-of-factly. I must talk to my husband first, Ellie said. No, you'll buy it, the woman said without a trace of doubt in her voice. She motioned to the floorboards where Ellie's drops of blood were no longer visible. This place knows you now. You're part of it, and it's part of you. She walked toward the door and opened it. She gestured for Ellie to exit. I'll be in touch about the price. But I'm not sure if... Ellie stammered. Then the woman, suddenly appearing tired and older than she had been when Ellie had first met her no more than 15 minutes ago, turned back and faced her. I need you. I need someone like you to run this place. It's special. I'll make you an offer you won't be able to refuse. I'll be in touch. And she was. Ellie had offered her a card with her contact information, but the woman said she didn't need it. I know how to find you. Ellie walked away and headed toward the school. Confused? Elated? Apprehensive. Carrie Dad did find her, and the offer was too good to refuse. Shep had been sitting next to her at a coffee shop one morning when the strange woman had walked up to their table and sat down, like they'd been expecting her this whole time. The woman had seemed lighter as she walked away, her arms swaying beside her. She looked back and waved at them and walked away. A few weeks later, Ellie met her at the studio to sign the contracts and paperwork and get the keys. As Ellie held the deed in her hands for the first time, the woman offered her a strange warning. Your students must not talk about their dreams. Keep them on topic. Keep them talking about the painting. They will want to while they're here, but you can't let them. It can be very draining. Ellie didn't know what the advice meant, but the woman had been running the art studio for many years. She assumed she meant that listening to others could be distracting while trying to teach a class, but the way she had said it was odd, Ellie decided. Ellie's daydreams were interrupted by a loud banging. It sounded like it was coming from outside. And dried her hands. As she rounded the corner, she recognized a familiar woman from one of her classes just a few days ago. The girl Susie, Ellie remembered, and a group of her friends had been in town for a pageant and had some time to spare between rehearsals. They booked a class on a whim after searching for fun things to do in the area. As Ellie got closer to the door, she noticed the woman looked slightly different than before. Her cheekbones were higher, eyebrows perfectly shaped, lips fuller, and her hair was almost glowing. It was so shiny. It looked as though she had major cosmetic surgery. But Ellie knew that couldn't be right. Ellie thought about what day it was. The pageant was last night, she thought. The girl was holding her painting up to her chest with one arm as she banged her fist on the door. When she saw Ellie, she stepped back and waited for her to open it. She looked angry. As Ellie swung the door open after unlocking it, Susie's eyes filled with tears that began immediately falling down her face. She began to scream at Ellie incomprehensibly. Ellie finally managed to stop her screaming, but the woman didn't look any less upset. But oddly, she was still more radiant than Ellie had remembered. The look on Susie's face sharpened as she noticed Ellie's own puzzled expression. The woman shoved the painting at Ellie, and Ellie grabbed it from her. The painting had been a simple river street scene, one of Savannah's most famous locations. The painting that she taught her students how to draw that class did not have any people in it. At least, not when they'd left with their paintings. Ellie was certain, because she always took a picture of the class to post on her social media page, but the painting she held in front of her now was slightly different. It was cleaner and more professional than what she was certain Susie was capable of painting. Not that Susie had been bad, but she had never painted anything in her life. At least that's what she told Ellie. In the painting Ellie was now holding, there was a beautiful woman standing in the street corner in front of a shop. Although tiny, the features on the woman's face in the painting were most certainly that of a woman standing in front of her now. It was so clear, it almost looked like a photograph had been superimposed onto the painting. Ellie looked back to Susie's new sculpted face, then back to the woman in the painting. Did you paint this woman? The woman's face changed to that of fear and a deeper sorrow than Ellie had ever seen before in her entire life. The woman's beauty still radiated through despite the heavy sobbing. No lines, no pursed lips or red blotchy skin normally associated with someone who'd been crying. Her nose was even dry. Ellie would have been a snotty mess if she had been crying like Susie. No, I did not paint this. She hesitated. It seemed as though she was searching Ellie for answers, like Ellie was supposed to know what was happening. Carrie Dad's warning suddenly came back to her. The voice wasn't inside her head either. It seemed to be speaking from all around her. This was her dream. She ushered Susie inside the shop and motioned for her to sit down in one of the chairs lined up at the tables in the main room. She offered her a bottle of water, and the woman accepted. After a few gulps, the woman replaced the cap and placed a bottle on the table. She paused a moment longer before speaking. Ellie waited patiently. She somehow already knew what the woman was going to say, but it didn't make it any less shocking to hear it as the words began to spill from Susie's mouth. The painting had changed over the last few days, starting with the shadow in the corner, then forming into a silhouette. She had been staying in a townhome on the other side of Savannah with her parents and siblings, a younger sister and an older brother. Her mom and dad were the first to start changing. The next morning, both had developed crippling back pain and had ended up in the emergency room. They had now aged 10 years over the last 2 days. They could barely walk. She wasn't sure how they were going to get back home to North Carolina. Yesterday morning, the woman had completely formed in the painting. Her brother's face had started to distort in unnatural ways, and of all things, he had developed a hunched back. his skin turning black in patches on his arms. Tears filled her eyes once more as she started to talk about her younger sister, Sarah. She's gone? Just vanished? No one knows where she went. She was only 9. Ellie stared at the woman. Her mouth pursed slightly. She was unable to speak. And me? What is happening to me? I am more beautiful than I've ever been, but I don't want this. I don't want it. I want my family back. The woman's body shook as she began to sob harder. I don't think I can help you, Ellie said quietly after letting a few moments pass. Susie stopped sobbing and shot her head up angrily. What do you mean? It's the painting. You did something. You witch. Did you? Ellie hesitated. The woman screeched. Did I what? Did you tell your friends you wished you were prettier than you were while you were painting or something of that nature? The look of fear was there again, and she looked up to the ceiling as if asking it for answers. She looked back at Ellie. I may have said something like that to my friends, but I didn't mean it. Yes, I believe you did. Ellie was not angry at the woman. This was clear to Susie as she explored the pained expression that Ellie wore. There may be someone who can help, but I don't know if I can find her. Give me your number and I'll call you as soon as I know more. What's going to happen to my family? Susie asked her softly. Ellie hesitated. I don't know. The woman turned and walked out the door. Ellie locked the door behind her and leaned her back against it, slumping to the floor and pulling her knees to her chest. Suddenly, from somewhere in the back of the studio, Ellie heard a faint ringing. Ellie's phone was still in her smock. She stood up shakily and walked slowly to the back of the shop. As Ellie neared the utility room, the ringing became louder. On the counter next to the sink was a rotary phone. This one was plastic, unlike her grandmother's ornate gold-leafed spectacles she remembered from her childhood. The phone continued to ring. Ellie wasn't sure how she had missed this phone. Had it always been here? Certainly not. Ellie had cleaned the building top to bottom before her grand opening. There was no phone here before. She walked over to it hesitantly but answered. It made a soft clicking noise as it was lifted off the receiver by Ellie's shaky hands. Ellie spoke in a soft voice. Hello? She can get her family back if she offers a sacrifice. A southern Cuban drawl lilted out from the phone's speaker, tinged with static. Carrie, Dad, thank God you were just the person I needed to speak with. In order to save the girl's family, she will have to paint a new painting. The spirits, they demand balance. Carrie, Dad, what are you talking about? Balance, Ellie. She must agree. She must make a new wish. Her dreams have changed. A long pause. She will have to paint a new picture. She'll be back shortly. Ellie heard another soft click and the call disconnected. Ellie placed the phone back on the blue plastic rotary phone. Susie, a few blocks down already, clutching the painting to her chest, felt the buzz of her phone in her pocket. She pulled it out and clicked on the text message alert from an unknown number. Come back. Susie looked down the street towards the art studio. She looked back down at the phone and watched for another message to come through. Nothing did. The message disappeared. Susie slowly walked back towards the octopus lady. Ellie waited. And that's all for tonight's entries in Liminal City Public Library. Thank you so much for spending time with me. And if you'd like to see your own stories on the shelf next month, or if you want to listen back to tonight's recording, you'll find those details on my Substack. I'll post in the subscriber chat, and you'll see the replay in the latest post once I get that posted for y'all. This was so much fun. Mac, just go to my subscriber chat and there's a submission thread. I think you may have to scroll up like 4 or 5 posts up. And I'll post also in the replay post all the links to the stories that we read tonight, and also links for how to submit your stories. And yeah, we'll do this again next month. This was so much fun. So thank you guys, truly, truly.